When you are asked questions, remember to, if you are confused or feeling frustrated because you don't necessarily feel 100% confident with your answer, avoid scratching the back of your neck, because even if it's not on a conscious level, on a subconscious level, we can all interpret that as this person is not 100% sure about what they're saying, or they do not have the answer to what it is that I'm asking them. So remember to look for the neck scratch and remember to avoid the neck scratch because it tends to signal confusion and frustration. And now the next visual communication strategy that I'd like to share with you is the steeple. The steeple is a visual communication strategy that you want to employ when you want to project the image of power and confidence. What you want to do is, let's say if you're in a job interview, or if you're in a review at work, or if you're speaking to a customer, if you're in a situation, especially when somebody asks you a question, and when you answer that question, you want to show as much power and confidence as you possibly can. What you want to do is this. Siobhan, table. I wanted to show you what this strategy looks like. When you are in a meeting or an interview or a situation where you want to be seen as confident and powerful, one of the easiest ways to project the image of confidence and power and feel more confident is to lean into the table a bit. A lot of times people don't know what to do with their hands or with their body posture during an interview or during a meeting or during a high risk communication situation. This is a very simple strategy that everybody can implement. You want to lean forward a little bit as I'm leaning now, plant your forearms heavily on the table as they're planted now, and lean into the person with whom you're communicating. So as you are communicating, you will have a posture that is not only powerful, but is also projecting the image of an active listener. So having said that, I'm already in my standard body language position, and the steeple goes like this. Remember, my forearms are planted on the table and my fingers are already interlocked. The steeple is simply raising your fingers and putting your fingertips together in the form of a steeple. But you want to do this sparingly. You do not want to overuse this technique because it becomes overpowering to the person with whom you're using it. It is a very powerful body language message. It is a very powerful visual communication strategy. So you want to use it sparingly. You don't want to hold this pose for more than, let's say, 4 seconds at a time. And here's exactly how you want to use this. Let's say that I'm in an interview and somebody asks me something like, what's one of the biggest strengths that you'll bring to this organization? Or how confident are you in your training ability? Either one of those questions is basically going to come back to training for me. So I'm going to use those questions. If I'm asked a question like that, and as I answer it, I want to project as much power and confidence in my answer as I possibly can. Let's say that somebody asks me, how confident are you in your training abilities? As I answer the question, I would also implement the steeple like this. I'd say something such as, I'm very confident in my training abilities. In fact, it's one of the biggest strengths that I'll be bringing to this organization. Or I could do it like this. What is one of the biggest strengths that you'll be bringing to this organization? I could say, I believe that one of the biggest strengths that I'll be bringing to your organization is my ability to not only communicate, but also train others. I've been doing it more than 15 years, and it's a skill that I enjoy developing and sharing with others. And you'll notice that as I deliver those messages, I simply put my fingers up for a few seconds and then put them back down. And there's something subconscious that the person will receive in that message that will make them believe, they're very confident in that message. A powerful communicator. So remember, practice using the steeple when you're at home so that you get comfortable doing this. Do it at the dinner table. Do it while you're speaking with your friends or your spouse, whether you're out for dinner, when you're out for drinks. Get used to putting your forearms on the table, raising your fingers up in the form of the steeple for a few seconds while you're delivering a message, and then putting your fingers back in an interlocked position. That is the steeple, and that will project an image of more power and confidence while you're delivering your message. James gone. Now I'd like to get into our danger phrases and power phrases. And the first danger phrases that I'd like to give you are for home. Our first danger phrase is, before I get into it, let me ask you, what's the number one thing that people say to other people when they encounter an out of control person and they want that person to calm down? What's the most commonly said thing? What tends to fly out of people's mouths when they want to get somebody else to calm down because they're emotionally out of control? What do people say? That's right. Calm down. What's the worst thing we could say to somebody when they're emotionally out of control? Calm down. So I'd like you to think for a moment when you are in an emotionally charged state, when you find yourself emotionally out of control. We've all been there. What are you looking for? When you are saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, blah, 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 or I'm so sad, I can't believe this happened to me, or I'm so angry, whatever it is that you are emotionally out of control about. When you find yourself in that situation, what are you really looking for in other people? It tends to be validation. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody to tell us, I get it. I understand. That's what we're looking for. So the power phrase that I'd like you to start using when you find yourself communicating with somebody who is emotionally out of control or has lost it for a moment and you want them to calm down is, I understand, or I can see. So repeat that out loud after me. I understand. Oh, buddy's joining us again. And, hey, buddy. And I can see. For example, I can see you are really upset. Or, I understand how frustrating this is for you. But remember, as caveat, do not say to somebody this danger phrase, oh, I know just how you feel. Because what do people tend to say or think when we tell them, I know just how you feel? What do they think? What do you think when people say that to you? Right. No, you don't. So remember, it's not, when we say that, we tend to say that with good intentions. We tend to want to empathize with people when we're saying to them something along the lines of, oh, I know exactly how you feel, or I know just how you feel. But that really doesn't do it. That does the opposite of what we intend to do normally. It tends to disconnect us from that person when what we're trying to do is connect. So instead, the next time you're about to say something along the lines of, oh, I know just how you feel, instead, say, I understand why you'd feel that way. Because remember, telling somebody, or in your own words, when I give you a danger phrase or a power phrase, remember that they are verbal pattern suggestions. You can always mold them to fit your personal communication style, just like any dance step. There are the steps, but people modify them to suit their own individual style. You might phrase it a little bit differently. However, I don't want to tell somebody, I know how you feel, because that tends to make them think, no, you don't, or say, no, you don't. And instead, if I rephrase that a little bit and say something more along the lines of, I understand why you'd feel that way. I understand why you'd be so upset by that. What I'm telling you is, I understand why. And that is simply saying, I comprehend the chain of events that have led you to feel the way that you currently feel. I can't understand because no one can understand how you feel. It's unique to you. However, I can certainly appreciate why you'd feel that way. So remember, danger phrase, calm down, and I know just how you feel. Power phrase, I understand, I can see, and I can understand why. And the next danger phrase for home is, I promise I won't get mad. Because when we tell people, I promise I won't get mad if you just tell me yada, yada, yada. I promise I won't get mad if you just tell me what happened to the blah, blah, blah. The people that we say that to, no, that's not true. We can't promise somebody that we're not going to get mad. What we really mean to say when we use a phrase like that is, please help me to understand rather than just get upset. So if you want to open the lines of communication, rather than just say something to say it, which doesn't open the lines of communication, such as, I promise I won't get angry, when it's empty words. Instead, the message that we tend to be trying to convey is, help me to understand rather than just to get upset. And people tend to respond to that in a more open way and actually tell you what you're looking to find out, even though you'll get angry because what you're asking for is help. And people respond well when other people ask them for help. And so even if you're asking for help in understanding something, granted, we all know that in the situations that tend to come about where you find yourself saying something along the lines of, I promise I won't get mad if you just, it tends to be that people aren't going to open up at that moment anyway. It tends to be that people are going to keep whatever it is we're trying to drag out of them guarded for a little while longer. But if we use the approach more often of, help me to understand rather than just to get angry, you'll notice that they will come back to you more often than they would have had you simply used a phrase, I promise not to get angry if you just tell me yada, yada, yada. So remember, danger phrase, I promise not to get angry, empty, useless phrase. Replace that with something more genuine and straightforward, such as, help me to understand rather than just to get angry. And now I'd like to talk about your danger phrases and power phrases for work. Your first danger phrase for work is, does that make sense? Because when we say to somebody, does that make sense? And you know, if you say that a lot, and if you don't say that a lot, you know people that say that a lot to you. Hey, buddy. Right. You know that when somebody says to us, does that make sense? Nobody wants to respond with, no, that doesn't make sense, because that's going to make the person who says, no, that doesn't make sense, feel stupid. And nobody wants to feel stupid. What we're basically telling somebody is, hey, it makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you? Can you understand that? Can you understand? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? We're asking people, are you able to comprehend the message that I just sent? I hope so. If you don't, you're kind of dumb. And that's not probably what we mean to say. That's just how people feel when we say that to people. So instead, the next time you find yourself about to say something along the lines of, does that make sense? What you want to do is put all the blame on you and say something more along the lines of, what have I left unclear? Or what am I leaving out? Because when you say, and the genuine with saying, what have I left unclear? What am I leaving out? And you can expand on that and say something like, I know there's something I'm leaving out. What is it? I know that I'm leaving something unclear. Can you help? When you say things like that, people might not like to admit that they don't understand something, but they love to point out what you're doing wrong. And that's the way we're phrasing it, saying, what am I leaving out? What am I leaving unclear? And that's okay. I have to put my ego aside to be an effective communicator and ask people, what am I not communicating correctly? And then when you phrase it like that, people tend to be more open and they'll tell you what is not clear to them. Our last danger phrase for work is problem. And the power phrase that we'll use to substitute that is challenge. Now, I do believe that this is way overused, the word challenge. There are some people who never use the word problem and always instead use the word challenge. And I'm not suggesting that you do that. I think that we can take that too far. However, if I'm coming to my boss at work, or if I'm coming to my employees at work and I have a problem, I want to be very careful how often I use the word problem. And if something is a big problem, I want to reserve that language for the really big problems. Under normal circumstances, what I want to do is use the word challenge and say to my boss something along the lines of, I have a challenge in the XYZ department. Can you help? Or, hey team, I know that lately we've been having a lot of challenges with XYZ. In most circumstances, I don't want to be somebody who brings problems to the table. I don't want to be that person because challenges are things that we want to overcome. So switching my language pattern from problem to challenge when it's appropriate, it's a very simple way to stop projecting the image of somebody who brings problems to the table and instead project the image of a problem solver. And by the way, a little tip, if you are bringing a challenge to your boss, one of the things that is a great psychological and communication maneuver is to appeal to your boss's ego. You can use this, of course, with anybody. You can use this with your kids or your coworkers or your spouse or anybody, but particularly with our bosses, when we are looking for help from them and we don't want to be seen as needy or somebody who's dumping something on them or who's bringing another problem to the table, appeal to their ego. And when you talk about the challenge that you're bringing to them, figure out what it is that makes them tick, that they take pride in, and ask them to give you some of it. Meaning, if I think that my boss considers herself or himself a terrific leader, I might come to my boss and say something more along the lines of, Susan, I have a challenge and could really use some of your leadership. Because in doing so, I've eliminated the word problem, substituted the word challenge, and appealed to Susan's ego and what she considers to be one of her great strengths, which is her leadership abilities, and asked for some of that. And so if you can do that when you're bringing a challenge to the table with your boss, you'll be golden and you'll be seen as somebody who wants to develop, and you'll be seen as a problem solver. Now that's a good use of the word problem, as well as somebody who's looking to grow and learn from his or her bosses. And most bosses want to believe that their employees want to learn and grow from them. So those are your danger phrases and power phrases for the week. Remember to keep them in your pocket, write them down, and practice consciously purging those danger phrases from your verbal repertoire. Those are things you would normally use. And practice using those new verbal patterns we just talked about, if those would be new verbal patterns to you, so that they become more natural when you use them both at work and at home. Now I'd like to talk about a couple of professional phone etiquette strategies. And we haven't talked about these so far in any of our lessons. Hey, bud. So I wanted to touch on these things because if you are a manager or a supervisor, especially of a small business, chances are that the staff does not have a standard way of answering the phone, of answering common questions, of saying no. And something that we can all do in our business, no matter big or small, is create communication standards. And that immediately elevates us in the eyes of our customers to a more professional, credible, trustworthy level. You know how if you call, for example, the Four Seasons, they can't just answer the phone however they want. But in many of our small businesses, we don't have a standardized way of answering the telephone. And for example, if Monica's at the front desk, Monica might answer the telephone like this. This is Monica. Or if you're working at Dan's Donuts, somebody might answer the phone this way. Dan's Donuts. And that does nothing for our professional image. And it's very simple to standardize the way we do things, such as answer the phone, say no when we have to a customer. And if you can do this, whether or not you're the boss or the owner of your business, if you can start answering the telephone this way, you will be noticed and you will separate yourself from the pack as a more polished, savvy communicator. For example, if you're working at a small business right now and you're wanting to be seen as somebody who really can take more responsibility, who can be that manager, who can be that leader in your organization, one of the simplest ways to do it is to polish your communication skills, and telephone skills and telephone etiquette is something that we use every day in front of other people. So the following two strategies are great the first one is only for on the telephone, and the second one is either on the phone or in person. And I'd like to get started with the phone technique. The phone technique is a 5-step process that we should all be using when we answer the telephone in a professional environment. When you answer the telephone right now, wherever it is that you work, what points are you hitting when you answer the telephone? Think about how you answer the phone. And I'm talking about whether you know who's calling or not. How do you answer the telephone? Think about it. What do you say?
Do I have the party to whom I am speaking?
What we should be hitting on is we should be using our power tone. We should be giving a courteous greeting. We should be stating the organization's name. We should be stating our name, and we should be ending with the question. Those are the 5 things that we should all be doing when we are answering the telephone in a professional environment. By the way, if you're looking to get a job and you're on probation someplace, if you're an intern, let's say, and the person who is in charge of hiring you or not sees you answer the telephone this way, you got the job. Okay. So the 5-step phone technique is very easy to remember when you just remember PHONE. P, find your power tone. Practice finding your phone power tone by simply doing this. Pretend like I said something very powerful to you right now that you agree with and say, do that. Okay, say, That final vibration is going to be your professional power tone. So you want to find that tone because many people will answer the phone like this. This is Monica. You don't want to answer the phone like that. So find your good power tone. It's that vibration at the bottom of your throat when you say, And that's the tone you want to find. That's step 1, P, for power tone. The H stands for you want to say hello. And you want to say hello in a courteous way. You want to add something unique to your personal communication style. I mean, if you can possibly allow everybody to implement these freestyle scripting techniques, but using their own personal style, as opposed to, for example, welcome to McDonald's. Would you like to try a double cheeseburger today? If you can avoid totally scripting out word for word, you should avoid it. And instead, let somebody answer the phone. And the H is simply saying, hello, good day. It's a happy day. I'm glad to call. Some type of nice phrase that fits your personality. For example, when I answer the phone, I tend to say, well, good morning and thanks for calling Power Diversity. That's how I answer the phone. And that's saying, good morning, hello. Then we get to the O. I'm going to state the organization's name. So, for example, if I'm working at Dan's Donuts, so far I'd say, hello and thanks for calling Dan's Donuts. Simple. When I say hello and thanks for calling Dan's Donuts, I'm using my power tone. I'm saying hello and I'm stating the organization's name, but I'm not done because then I have to state my name. This is Dan. And then I have to end with a question. That is the E, end with a question. For example, if I am promoting a new flavor of the month, I might want to say something such as, have you heard about our new Raspberry Supreme Donut? And if you can, promote your organization's products and services in a natural way at the end of your greeting. Always do that. Have you heard about our monthly specials? Are you calling to see how much you can save on your car insurance? If you can end with a question like that, great. But if you can't, simply end with a closed-ended question such as, what can I do for you today? And again, keep it natural. How can I help you today? Putting it all together. If I were answering the phone at Dan's Donuts, I might do it like this. Hello, and thanks for calling Dan's Donuts. This is Dan. What can I do for you today? Or, hello, and thanks for calling Dan's Donuts. This is Dan. What do you have a taste for today? Something that can fit with the business, something that could promote my products and services, or a simple ending question will do. But those are the 5 key points you always want to hit so that no matter where you are, if I were in a job interview at Wells Fargo Bank and during the interview, the phone rang and the person who was interviewing me said, could you grab that? You want to always be able to do that because no matter where you are, if you know those 5 steps, I could answer the phone and say, sure. Thank you for calling Wells Fargo. This is Dan. What can I do for you today? Simple. And people who will see that will recognize you as a powerful, polished, savvy communicator who knows how to navigate professional communication situations. And that is really one of the basics that almost everybody gets wrong. So remember, PHONE, power tone, say hello, use the organization's name, use your name, and end with a question. Simple. And now I'd like to get into saying no. We have many different ways of saying no that we discuss in these lessons. And this one is for when I'm saying no to a customer, let's say, who is making a request. I have to decline it. I have to be clear that I'm declining their request, but I want to do it as diplomatically as possible. This is the diplomatic decline. The diplomatic decline consists of basically the 4 S's. I want to sympathize, say no, say why, and suggest alternatives. Repeat that after me. Sympathize, say no, say why, suggest alternatives. Sympathize, say no, say why, suggest alternatives. Keep this card with you, this flashcard in your course materials, and practice those 4 S's. Sympathize, say no, say why, suggest alternatives until you can deliver the diplomatic decline effortlessly. Because it's, again, one of those professional communication skills where if you can articulately say no in a diplomatic way, people will notice that. Because again, if you ask somebody 4 seasons for something and they have to tell you no, they are not just going to wing that and say, oh, I'm sorry, because they have communication standards there. And we all want to be able to implement as many communication standards in our own verbal repertoire as often as possible because you never know when you're going to need them and you never know who's listening. So a simple standard no using those 4 principles is something such as, let's say that a customer were to call up and ask for extension on their light bill. They paid it late a couple months ago, and they're calling up now to ask me if they can pay it late again. And instead of winging it, if I have the 4 S's, the diplomatic decline, I can simply say something along the lines of, oh, I understand these deadlines can be frustrating, but unfortunately, I cannot extend the deadline another month because there's already been one time that this was paid late in the past 6 months. And to keep everybody's costs down, not only yours, but all of our other customers, unfortunately, we can only give 1 extension every 6 months. I can, however, set up a automatic payment plan so that this doesn't happen again and catch you off guard. Would you like me to do that? And in doing that, I sympathized, said no, said why, and given an alternative. Simple. And also remember, when you are saying why, always try to state a benefit. Unfortunately, we can't do that for you because the reason we can only give 1 extension every 6 months is to keep costs low, not only for you, but for all of our customers. Or if somebody's asking for another revision on their website design, unfortunately, I can't offer you another revision. You've already had 3. And to keep costs down for you and all of our customers, we can only offer a maximum of 3 revisions. I can, however, provide you an additional revision for only $75 extra. Would you like me to go ahead and add that to your account? I always want to state the benefit to the customer. If there's a reason that I have to tell them no, make it a good reason. And that is your responsibility as a savvy professional communicator to find a good reason. And at the end, always state an alternative. If you can possibly get them involved, do that. For example, I'd be happy to help you set up an automatic payment plan so this doesn't happen again. Would you like me to do that with you? Do you have your credit card handy? Would you like me to go ahead and add that to your account? If you can possibly get them involved in that alternative part of your saying no process, great. Because people always like to feel as though they are involved in the process. So that is how you say no in a professional environment. That's the diplomatic decline. Sympathize, say no, say why, suggest alternatives. Keep that card in your pocket. And again, this is something that you can practice while you're at home, while you're talking to your kid, while you're talking to your spouse. If you can practice in a no-risk environment, hitting those 4 points as you say no, then when it comes time to do it in a professional environment, it'll come out much more effortlessly and easily and sound much more natural coming from you. That is the diplomatic decline. And now we are at my favorite part of this lesson, our communication principle of the week. I'm going to be talking about some different relationship principles for the next few lessons. And this is one of the 3 most important communication principles of all when it comes to relationships. There are 3 main communication principles that I want to keep in mind that will magically transform any relationship. We're going to get to the other 2 later on. This is one of the 3 transformational principles that can really transform any relationship. And it is, it can only be what I am not giving that can be missing from any one of my relationships. So I'd like you to take a deep breath and repeat this after me. It is only what I am not giving that could possibly be missing from any relationship. We frequently find ourselves saying things such as, why can't my spouse be more romantic? Or why can't my boss treat me with more respect? That's a common issue that I have. And I know that there's somebody out there right now that has a big problem with her boss or his boss. And her problem is, or his problem is, my boss is outrageous. She treats me with such a lack of respect. I can't believe it. And what's missing from this relationship, we think, is respect. And we look for it in the other person. Again, with our spouse, many people come to me and they'll tell me, because I talk a lot about relationships in my conferences and workshops, relationships is the game. So people will come and they'll say, my husband has completely lost any trace of romance. He is the most unromantic spouse that you could possibly imagine. That's what's missing from my relationship. What am I going to do about it? And it might be difficult to recognize at first that it can only be what we are not giving to this relationship that could possibly be missing. But really think about it. And this takes a lot of ego casting aside for us to really let this one sink in. For example, if your spouse isn't romantic, so says you, and you want your spouse to be more romantic, many times what we'll do is we'll tell our spouse things like, would you mind doing X, Y, Z? You never bring me flowers anymore. You never send me those love songs. You don't do this and that and the other. Why don't you hold my hand? And we start to put chains on that person and put them in a box and tell them how to behave and tell them that they're not romantic and tell them to be more romantic. What could possibly be less romantic than that? So if you, for example, find yourself in that situation where you think my spouse needs to be more loving with me, maybe you should take a good look in a mirror and recognize that there is nothing more loving and more romantic than allowing our partner to be whoever they are at that very moment, to release all chains and labels off of them, all gone, and say, you know what, I'm going to accept you exactly as you are. I'm going to accept you for the person that you are, and I'm going to love that person, and I'm going to be sweet to that person, and I'm going to be kind to that person. And if I want to be romantic, I'm going to be the romantic person, and I'm going to completely cast aside any preconceived notions of how you should be behaving, because that is the least romantic thing in the world. That is the least loving thing in the world, to want anything for you but love and freedom. And so maybe if I project what I really want, what's really missing from this relationship into that relationship, maybe all of a sudden I'll start to have it. And by the way, as one little caveat, we might think we know what's missing from a relationship, but it might not always be what we think. We might think that what's missing from our relationship that would save this relationship is romance, and that might not be it at all. But if you do recognize that something's missing, it can only be what you're not giving, because all of our relationships are a reflection of us and what we're giving to that relationship. It's all coming back to us. You can call it what you want. You can call it you reap what you sow. You can call it karma. You can call it the universal law. We only get back what we give out. And so by definition, if there's something missing in one of our relationships, it's simply that which we're not giving to that relationship. And that can be really difficult to see. For example, many people in the workplace, they'll say, what's missing from our work relationship? Respect. I can't believe how people talk to one another. I can't believe how my boss talks to me. If I could change one thing about the relationship that I have with my boss, that I would like her to respect me. All right, let's go with that. Like, let's say that's you. And you're saying to yourself, yes, I'd like my boss to respect me. She doesn't respect me enough. That's what's missing. How about you respect your professional relationship enough to be a polished, savvy, enlightened communicator, regardless of how anybody else communicates at the office, including your boss? How about that? Maybe if you, for example, if you're having trouble with respect, if you respected yourself, because really it's all one big relationship that we have. We have a relationship with ourselves. We have a relationship with the universe, our maker, whatever you want to call it, and a relationship with everybody else on the planet. And if you find that there's not enough romance in your relationship with the big R, that's my relationship that I have with everybody. If you find that there's not enough romance, respect, love, whatever it is that you think is missing, try bringing that. Try respecting yourself enough to say, at work, for example, I am going to respect this workplace and this relationship so much that it's not going to make a difference how other people behave, because that's about them. What's about me is the attitude that I bring into the workplace that's going to be respectable, courteous, and professional, regardless of what's going on around me. Now, I know it's easier said than done. We all know that, but it's a good place to start. We have to start someplace. And what we want to start doing is recognizing that what's missing from these various relationships in our life, it's all one big relationship, but these various issues that come up, these things that seem to be missing, really start asking yourself, am I giving that? And don't just automatically say, yes, I am. I'm romantic with my spouse. I'm loving. I'm respectable. I'm professional. Really ask yourself, is there room for growth? Can I maybe do something that's truly romantic? There's nothing more romantic than allowing somebody to be who they are. Nothing will win somebody's heart more than that, because that's real love. And there's nothing more respectful than respecting that how somebody communicates has nothing to do with you. My boss calls me names every day at work. My boss puts a sign on my desk that says damn steaks or any other type of insult. Me being able to be respectful enough of that person to recognize that has nothing to do with me. Any issue that is causing you to express something other than great love. In a perfect world, we'd all be giving and receiving great love. But most people at some point or another can't feel as though they're getting the needs met while expressing love at the same time. They just feel that way. And so if you're misbehaving, one of the most respectful things that I can do for me and for you, and one of the most professional things that I can do, is recognize something to miss in your life that has nothing to do with me. So what I'm going to do is infuse this relationship, what it is that I perceive to be missing. So if it's respect, I'm going to find a way to be respectful. If it's love, I'm going to find a way to be loving. Now, by the way, for example, let's say someone bashing my face in every day. If I'm married to an abusive spouse and they're bashing my face in, what might be missing from that relationship could be distance. Could be that person doesn't respect me. That's the way I see it. But what I need to do is respect myself, infuse respect into this relationship, and do what's right for me. So again, we might have it a little bit out of whack, what we think is missing from a relationship. We very rarely see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. But if we can start with recognizing that when something has gone awry in a relationship, and I perceive there to be lack in this relationship, it's simply what I'm not giving to this relationship that could possibly be missing, is going to not only help heal these relationships, but it's going to help bring me peace. Because if that's true, that it can only be what I'm not giving that could possibly be missing from any relationship, what that means is I am totally in control and in the driver's seat. Isn't that great? And it's the truth. So with that in mind, I'd like to send you out into the communication sphere. You are armed with some new strategies for the week. Remember, this week, you're going to be practicing looking for and avoiding head scratch. You're going to be practicing making the steeple. You're going to be eliminating some danger phrases, adding some power phrases. You're going to be practicing your professional greeting over the telephone. You're going to be practicing the diplomatic decline. And you're going to be focusing on your principle of the week, which is it could only be what I'm not giving that could possibly be missing from any relationship. So, Buddy and I would like to thank you for joining us this week. I will see you next time. This is communication trainer Dan O'Connor and Buddy signing off. I'll see you next week.